Many of you listening will already know Sister.
I'm okay now.
Sister Theoktisti, who is the nun at the Monastery of St John the Forerunner near Larissa. The monastery, for those who don't know it, is situated about 1,000 meters high on the side of Mount Ossa, outside the village of Anatoli. It was founded in the 16th century and abandoned by a group of male monks in the mid-1980s. They had been sent to restore it, but found the going too tough for them. Nuns from the monastery of the Apostle Paul in Attica, of whom Sister Theoktisti was one, took it over in 2000 and single-handedly restored its main building for occupation, doing virtually all the work on it themselves. A FoMA pilgrimage visited it in 2004, and we were privileged to be present at the consecration of their new church. Metropolitan Callistos took part in that. Since then, the nuns have set up a thriving business selling their dairy and other products at markets in nearby towns. They have completely restored the original church with its frescoes and are now restoring the rest of the original monastery buildings. They also helped found and work with a sister monastery in Estonia and support a mission in Africa. Sister Theoktisti is a member of the Friends. She has been on 2 of our pilgrimages in the past and has given talks at our 2013 Madingley Conference and our 2018 Summer Conference. I would like to welcome Sister Theoktisti. I hope you've caught your breath a little now.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to welcome you all. I'm terribly sorry that we had such a problem. Up in the mountain, things can get a bit difficult and we have a lot of wind, and somehow everywhere it wasn't working. And now we found a corner right up at the top of the monastery so that we can be with you. You see behind me, Larissa, who's been supporting us in all these things. Every time we come to Friends of Mount Athos and everything like this. Thank you very much. What I did want to talk to you about, and maybe I'll do it a little bit shorter than I would have done otherwise, but I'd like to welcome you. We are in the 4th week of Lent. Those of you who are our friends from the Roman Catholic tradition and the Protestant tradition have already celebrated Easter. So we wish you all the best with these celebrations, but we are still only halfway through. The other thing that crossed our mind is that particularly at this time, so many of us have been affected by the COVID, and some of you will have known people who have maybe passed or are suffering from it. And I'd like to tell you that we are praying for you, that we are with you, and we're very much aware of these difficulties that we're all going through at the moment. It really brings us to the subject that we are talking about, our spiritual life. And there are 3 talking about our spiritual life. And these 3 words are freedom, trust, and love. Freedom is this first freedom we have when we want to go to the monastery. This freedom, it's a very difficult subject really, because it's not only freedom from external constraints, it's already also freedom from internal problems that we have. So we say people have to be free in order to come and join the monastery. But what is that freedom? That's very difficult to answer. These days, we don't have parents or people forcing us to go to the monastery. And most people today are able to choose freely to go to the monastery because they've looked at other things and they've decided this is what I want to do. But one of the things that we find out is how free are we inside ourselves? This is something we experience in learning to trust and learning to love, because learning to trust means we're opening ourselves out and letting our Larissa really get to know us, letting our sisters get to know us. And it means to free us from all this sort of package that we take with us. We often like to think, I'm free, I'm okay. But we have to ask ourselves, maybe we're not quite so free as we think we are. And this is this process that we try and get into, to learn to open ourselves out, learn to free ourselves. And we're learning this only through the two things of learning to trust and learning to love. Trust that we open ourselves out and people won't misuse us, won't hurt us, won't use in a bad way the things that we're going to open out from ourselves. This trust, in first and foremost, of course, is to the Larissa, where we really sort of open all this sort of stuff that's going on inside of us in order to be free. And we can do that, we can have this trust when we know we feel loved. And this love is really the key to everything, because if we can be obedient in love, then we are free. So everything else that we do goes from this freedom that we know we're loved, that we know that people care about us, we know that that the community is there for us. So these three things, this freedom, this trust and love, if we can go through it, we get at the end of it, we're coming back to being free. And this is, I think, this sort of mystery, really, that's going on in monastic life, this process of uncovering ourselves, unburdening ourselves, because we can trust. And this trust and love, if we can experience it on a human level, then we can begin to experience what it means that God loves us. Because it can be very theoretical, God loves us, accepted as I am with all my weaknesses. Sometimes I say to the sisters, I didn't choose my weaknesses. I might have chosen a few others if I could have had the choice. But the thing is, we don't choose our weaknesses. We have the character that we have, and we have to move on and trust that the others will accept my weaknesses and love me because of them, in the same way that I then can love the others as they are, not how I think they should be, but how they really are. And I think in this kind of context, everything we do is then done through freedom. So if it's my personal prayer, if I'm reading a holy book, I do it out of freedom. I do it I choose to do it. The same if I'm going to the church, to the liturgical services, or taking part in the sacraments. I'm taking part of them because I freely choose to do so. That doesn't mean to say it's always very easy, but the freedom to do so, I choose to do so. Now, in particular in Lent, where we're fasting, that's not, we have one or two sisters for whom fasting is no problem whatsoever. They're very holy, but not all of us are quite so holy. And so the fasting can be a challenge, but I can only rise up to that challenge if I say, yes, I want to do this. I choose to do it freely, even though it's not easy, even though it might hurt me in a sense. It doesn't hurt me in one sense, but my wishes that I want. And this is the whole process, particularly in Lent, is to show us that we have so much of our own wishes, what I want, and I'm learning to get rid of just my own personal wishes. I want to open out. I want to try and be available and not so hung onto the things that I often am hung on. We often sort of get stuck on things, whether it's, I want to do this, I want this. And this is something that we're often talking about in the monastery, to free ourselves and from all these things in ourselves that pressure us. So this is the sort of thing that is constantly bringing us back to why are we in the monastery. I think something very similar you will experience in your own lives, as if you're married, in a relationship. You have to learn to love and trust, and that will challenge you. They're not always easy within your kind of relationships, to really open out, not have any hidden things going on inside, to accept the love and the trust that is being given to us. So I think this is really the main point that I would want to have said about what spiritual life in Lent is, a sort of put all under a microscope together of what we're living in our everyday lives. One of the things that we talk about is joyful sorrow. Often people say, why do you wear black? What's going on? And the things we say is that we wear black for the sorrow of the sins, the sorrow of the suffering of the world. But a monk's face should show that the joy is there. Behind everything, whatever suffering's there, we believe in the resurrection. We believe that this suffering is not the end, that this joy has to somehow come out of us at the same time. That's not very easy to live all the time, but I think it's a very essential part of what our life is about. I think I'd leave it at this kind of spiritual words, if you like, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about our practical life here in the monastery right now. Like you all, we have been very influenced by the pandemic. We've been closed now for over a year, and we have heard very many rather tragic stories. We have had to be closed, and I have to admit that I'm glad we are, because living in the kind of community we are, if one person gets sick, the whole community gets sick. And we've heard that there have been several communities in Greece where this has happened, where the whole community has got sick. And we have been able to avoid that by being very cautious. It produces, all these challenges have two sides to it. One side, of course, is that we have had more time to be with ourselves as a community, more time to do things that probably we wouldn't have done otherwise. This is a positive side. And the other side is that having no visitors has meant no income. So we've had to be inventive in order to get along. And so your have managed to find out ways around, and we have been allowed to do a sort of delivery. So people can ring up and order everything. They sort of click away. They order everything, and we go to either Thessaloniki or Larissa or Volos, and we bring, each person has their own little package, and they have times when they can come. And this has worked out very well for us. So on that side, life has been easier for us. We have had some other interesting things. You probably heard the earthquake. Fortunately, we were not damaged. We had to evacuate, and we were able to carry things outside and I'd eat outside. It was rather nice, really. We were outside, it was sunny, and we were able to spend the afternoon outside. For other people, of course, because the earthquake, the center of the epicenter wasn't very far from us, they had to, we've heard that nearly about 2,000 homes were damaged, some severely, some had to be destroyed. I have to say that our local government has been very active in church in helping people finding temporary accommodation for some of them and looking after them. And this is something that's also we've tried to be involved with. Another aspect for this year for us has been an important side of it, probably might not necessarily associate that with us too much, is that it's the 200 years of freedom from the Ottoman occupation. As you will remember, that the resistance to the Ottoman occupation actually started from a monastery, the Megisti Lavra in the Peloponnese. So this 200 years has been a very important side to know that the monasteries feel themselves, they're proud to be Greek. They're proud to be part of something that is bigger than themselves, and to know that that orthodoxy is rooted, sort of orthodoxy and being Greek. There are very few Greeks who would say they weren't Orthodox, if I put it this way. We know that Orthodoxy is much wider than any national barriers, but it's been a very beautiful side of celebrating that the freedom and the freedom to be able to be Orthodox, to follow Orthodoxy without any constraints. I thought maybe now I can, if any of you have any questions, because I've just been a very quick run through, but maybe some of you have questions that you would like to ask. Peter. I don't know if there are any questions.
If you have a question for Sister Theoktisti, could you please raise your hand? It's if you go to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little symbol that says reactions. And if you click on that, one of the options it gives you is raise your hand. And then either Nick or I will spot you and we will unmute you so you can ask your question of Sister Theoktisti.
Michael Sigachov, please. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, greetings from Canada, sister. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening to you, because the time difference. I just wondered if you could describe for us what's the structure of a typical day?
Of the monastery, yes. We begin with morning prayer at 5 in the morning, and after common prayer, there is a little time the sisters have for personal prayer until about, this is always roughly, because in summer and winter we sometimes change, but at 7:30 we have breakfast, and 8 o'clock we begin our different works. We call them diaconima, and then there is midday prayer for those who are in the monastery at around 12 o'clock. For those who are out in the garden or in the stable, They come back to join us for lunch at between 2 and 2:30. And then again, depending on the sort of jobs you have, the economy you have, between 3 and 5, you might be able to have a rest, or you might, if the sisters who go to the stable, for example, they have morning and evening, so that they have a rest, or actually it's a time where you can do things like write letters or read or whatever. At 5 o'clock, we have Vespers, and at 8 o'clock, we have Compline. So in between those times, it very much depends on the particular diaconima, the kind of job that you have. We try and say no noise after 10 o'clock, just because, you know, if you've got a full day and you need to be up at 5, then it's quite good to be able to say 10 o'clock, stop. Our main diaconima, our main works, we have the stable where we have cows and sheep and goats that need to be milked. We have chickens and rabbits, a cheese kitchen, because the milk from the cheese kitchen comes in. We make lots of different kinds of cheeses and yogurt and things like that. Then we have a garden with the greenhouse. So that's a lot of work all during the year. And of course, then you've got the, you know, the cooking, the cleaning, the sewing, all the other kinds of diaconima that we have. Does that answer your question? Is that okay?
Yes, it does, Sister. Thank you very much, Callisto.
Elizabeth, would you
I'd
like
just like to say,
Elizabeth, hello, would you like to ask your
Sorry,
question?
sorry, I thought that the sister wanted to say something else. Yes, sister, very, very good to see you and hear you. I wonder if you could say some more about the monastery's seed growing and seed distribution work, and I'm wondering how this has been affected by the pandemic, because presumably the seed exchange festivals can't happen, and also I know you have visitors coming in to help with the farm work and the harvest, which again presumably hasn't been happening. Thank you.
right. Well, you're very right there that we haven't had it. What's been interesting is that I had wanted to mention that, and it's good to ask because I had forgot to mention. Last year, no, actually 2 years ago now, a young man who is a filmmaker spent several weeks, a couple of times, several weeks in the monastery, and made a film. And it's called The Sisters of the Earth. And it's been shown on French television and German and Belgium and Holland, as far as we know. And since then, we have had an absolute influx of people wanting seeds. It just, you know, it could be 20 or 30 a day, emails, people asking to sell seeds. So although on the one side, we haven't had our seed festival, we've had a huge request for seed, the Sisters of the Earth, but also for all the people who are the Greeks who are now at home, and a lot of them want to have seeds. So we are, the post office, our local post office exists now basically because of us, because all the seeds people want. So this has been a very important thing, that people are very much more aware of the importance of old non-genetically modified seeds. People are very conscious of that, and some people having, for example, in Greece, I think some people have moved back to their villages for various reasons and have time and wanting to plant their seeds. And again, from France and Germany, many people are writing. So there's been a huge request for the seeds. The other side, of course, is that we have had no help allowed to come. God has been very good to us, really, because the sisters have worked very hard, and we have managed. I'm surprised at how wonderful harvest that the sisters are able to bring in, given that a huge amount of work that is involved in that. You'll be aware of how much it's about, but somehow, I think one of the things that we are conscious of is how lucky we are to be living on top of the mountain. It means that we can be outside. We don't have to worry about getting COVID, and we're conscious of all the people who are in their apartments in the city who would love to be able to get outside but can't. So I think that we have more work on the one side actually compensates that we know will work for those people who would otherwise like to be helping us. And we have a lot of, today, something like 5 requests today for people to come and visit us. And we just have to say, we have to wait until we know that people are allowed to travel. We have to be very careful now not to be less cautious. We have to follow all the regulations that they give us. I hope, does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
I have a question from Renee Hershon. She asks, could the sisters please tell us how many sisters there are and what age range do they cover? And also perhaps you could just mention for everybody how many nationalities there are.
Well, our nationalities are very, very interesting. If you can have in your mind a map of the world, and you start with America, where we have, and then we move to England, to Germany, to Estonia, to Austria, to Greece, to Cyprus, then to Lebanon, Armenia, Russia, China, Japan, and Australia. So that gives you, we're really across the globe. I think this is actually for us one of the greatest gifts, because one of the things we do learn from having sisters from so many different places is the way I think is not the only way to think. People think differently, and we learn to respect other people's way of thinking, other people's way of doing things, and to know that, you know, orthodoxy is the whole world. And I think for all of us, it's a huge richness. We have, our age range is very good, that we have sort of the older range. One sister has reached 70 or so, and the younger and the beginning of 20s. And so we have really a very wide range. We're very blessed to have young sisters. We have novices. I think it's anybody who knows about monastic life knows that having novices is a wonderful thing. It's a challenge because each novice brings their own background, their own culture, and they need to be accepted and loved as they are. And it means that everybody who comes brings something with them that, in a sense, changes us, and they change us, and they will be changed through the contact with the monastery. So this is a great blessing for us. This is your question, I think.
We've got a question from Irene Fafalios. Please unmute.
Yes, good evening, Sister. Thank you very much for your talk. I would like to ask you if there's any more restoration work going on in the monastery, and if you could tell us something about that. Thank you.
Yes. Well, monasteries always like doing restoration work. I think one of the things we have done, really since we've been here, 20 years, we've been restoring. When we first came in July 2000, we found two ruins, really. We found the old ruin, the 16th century monastery, and the new ruin, which had been built, it's built about 50 years ago now. Some monks had been there, and it had been empty for 15 years by the time we arrived. During that time, it had been open house for anybody passing by. So the hunters in the winter would come, and we discovered that they'd take a door and break it up and have the fire and light a fire inside the building. So the new monastery was a ruin as well. At this point, I'd say that God has humor, because if we had been allowed, we would have first restored the old monastery, but we didn't have permission to do that from the equivalent of the National Trust. So our first job was to make the new monastery habitable for us. And so gradually, basically one room after another, we've restored the new monastery. And then in 2015, when really the church of the old monastery was ready to fall down, we were finally given permission to, what they said was, do it yourselves. We're not going to give you any money, but you do it yourselves. And really, when I think back to it, I don't know how we did manage to do it ourselves, but it has happened. Been able to restore the church, and it is very, very beautiful. We've also managed to restore another small part at the east wing, if you like, where we have another beautiful little old chapel from St. Demetrius. I had actually on the other computer that I was going to talk to you on, I'd had some photos, and unfortunately, because we've had to change computers, I'm not able to show you any of the photographs, but the restoration of the rest of it, we've put into a sort of state where it's no longer dangerous, and we've had to leave it for the moment. What we've now had to do is the top floor in the new building, we need more cells. We're in the very fortunate position of having run out of cells. We have so many people that we're not allowed, we've no space left, which is actually, I have to say, a wonderful thing to be able to say. We don't have space left. We're trying now to be inventive into how to raise some money in order to build those cells. What we're going to try and do is this in bits. What we've actually done up to now is We just put the walls and the roof, and we're going to wait until we can pay that off. Until then, we can do the inside walls and things going. So this is the restoration work that we're doing now. This top floor, there was a cement floor, so it wasn't that we had to, it was ready to be built on. So we were able to do that. That's the restoration that we're doing at the moment because we need cells. I think you can imagine doing the kind of works we do, the diaconima we do, with the garden and the stable and the cheese field. It's very important for sisters to be able to wash, to be clean, to do all the, and also to have a place where they can go and be alone and just lie down, just be quiet. It's very important if you have this kind of job. And also living with 20 other women, it's very good to be able to be alone for some of the time. So that's why we're working hard on this restoration of this part of the monastery. Does that answer your questions?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Robert Allison has
You're
got a
welcome.
question. Hi, Robert. Can you unmute, please?
Thank you. Sister Theoktisti, I'm very happy to meet you in person, or at least virtually, and to extend greetings from the Friends of Mount Athos in the Americas.
Right. Yeah.
And from the Mount Athos Foundation. You answered,
That's
in
great.
fact, just now part of
Thank
the
you.
question.
Your name is not familiar to me.
That's okay. I'm a member of the Friends of Mount Athos in the Americas, the membership secretary.
Yeah.
And the president of the Mount Athos Foundation. I wanted to say greetings from all of us.
Mhm.
We've heard about
Thank you very much.
what you were just telling us, which is wonderful news about the new sisters who have come. I was happy to hear that you've begun to work on providing them accommodations. Can you tell us what it's like for the new sisters? What are their living conditions now? This must be challenging for them when you have so little space. So we'd like to hear how they're doing. And I think,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I'd like to tell you is that we try for the people who come in to make life as comfortable as possible. One of the things is that we are, sometimes somebody will move out of their room and share, or even one part of a little chapel has been made into a cell for the moment. So we're trying, I think you can be a bit of inventive, and I mean, everybody has a bed, everybody's trying to be comfortable. It's not ideal yet, but we're trying to get there. What we do is try and look after the newer sisters, have something a bit easier, and the older sisters, they can be a bit more flexible and can move around a bit, I'd say. Yes, I think our Eurondisa would like to say something to this.
Hello.
hello.
Everybody. I have to tell you, we are very happy here and very privileged. We have a fantastic place to live. And to tell you the truth, all this COVID peripetia, it was for us something very special. We had the most spiritual time that we had ever, because we didn't have for a whole year one eye in the door and one eye in the church. So we feel privileged. We hear every day stories from people that they are in the towns and they have, and I think that we are very often asked to say something from another side for what all the world is experienced last year. So I think it was a time to just think more, to make new beginnings, to see what is priority, real priority for the life. And really, it's not a priority to, it is beautiful to have a place, a space for you, but it is, I think if you have space in the heart of the other, you are already very big, blessed. So I think that we had this experience, and we had more time to pray. We had more time to have our services for us, and not to show something to anybody. God for all this experience. And I think that we also try to help sharing with other people the positive of the everyday life during this epidemic situation. So I would like to add this. Thank you.
Tony Wostenholm, could you please unmute?
Thank you very much, Sister Theoktisti. First of all, a rather trivial question. I'm a beekeeper. I'd like to ask if your bees have survived the winter well. But my main question concerns your link with Estonia. I wonder if you'd say a bit more about that, how it came about.
Yes.
And what is the relationship? Thank you.
Well, as far as the bees thing, I know they've done very well. Our sisters go down. One of our younger sisters comes back with swollen hands, but otherwise they're doing very well. I'm very impressed with the sisters, because all the sisters that get involved with them seem to love beekeeping, and they love the bees, and I'm very impressed. I'm afraid of them, so I don't go. But I'm glad to say that we have, I think because of the environment where we are, our bees are very healthy and very happy, as far as I know.
Very good news.
For Estonia, that's because we have, Estonia, well, let me just tell you at the beginning, it wasn't the Bishop Stephanos asked us, actually he asked us twice if we could help, and twice we said we weren't really able to, but when we were asked the third time, this is very biblical, when Samuel, the third time, we thought, well, maybe this is a very serious question and we have to see if we can help. So we have sisters there, usually we have 4 sisters there, and I have to say it's a big challenge for us. It isn't easy to have 4 sisters away, and financially it's a big challenge for us because you know, they are getting on their feet, but it's, you know, as you know, getting a monastery set up, the diocese, we have been given a church and a house that belonged to the church. This has been a very important thing because we've realized how many people are coming to the sisters and saying things like, well, you know, my parents were Orthodox, or my grandmother was Orthodox, or they have this Orthodox experience in them, although for the last years they weren't able to, or, you know, in the Soviet occupation, this wasn't the time. There are also people who've come new to Orthodoxy in Estonia, and there is a group, I think they're doing very well. It's not easy. You know, that we ourselves, Monastery, we don't want to be involved in any political issues to do with the Greek Church and the Patriarch of Constantinople and the Patriarch of Moscow. The island where our little monastery is situated is good because there was no Russian Orthodox presence there, so that we are avoiding any of those kind of problems. And also we have a very good relationship with the Russian Orthodox monastery, Püchtitsa, which is near the border with Russia. This is an important side for us, to have this positive contribution. The sisters have had baptisms. They have many people who are coming to visit them. It's a long, slow process, really. I think if it was working terribly well, maybe something wouldn't be quite right about it. It has to be slow. It's still a big challenge for us. Sometimes we think, how is it going to work out? But I think just to keep going from day to day and to see if this is God's will, it will work out. It's a very beautiful place, the island. The little monastery is on the island of Saaremaa. And it's very fortunate that there's a direct bus from the center of Tallinn, which stops just outside the monastery. So it's easy for people to reach the monastery. And it is very beautiful. But beauty alone isn't going to make it work. The sisters are trying to earn their own living now through beekeeping. So the sisters there are the sister who's responsible, who is Estonian, has done an official course, and she's now some kind of representative, not quite sure how that is, but with the Bees Association. So, you know, beekeeping is a very important side of what they're doing. But I think they're also involved in translating text. This is also a difficult area because translation is always difficult. But you know, they are, I'd say, growing into that, going into the country, and we don't know where that's going to bring us. We don't know what it's going to be like in 5 or 10 years' time. We hope it'll work out, but you know, it'll only work out if God wants it to work out, and we can't push it in any way. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. Is the working language in the monastery in Estonia English, Russian, or Estonian?
It's Estonian, and for those who don't know Estonian, English.
Very good. Thank you so much. That was
they
very
feel
interesting.
that, you know, their everyday language, the people they're speaking to, in Estonian.
Thank you.
Does anyone? Yes, Elizabeth, please unmute.
Sorry, yes, I'll come in again if there aren't other people. I'm wondering whether the monastery in Estonia has its own priest or a regular priest. And it also occurs to me how you have been managing during COVID. Have priests been able to visit to celebrate the liturgy for you?
Yes. Well, we've been very fortunate both in Estonia and here. A couple of years ago, a retired mayor of a local area was ordained priest, and he's from this area. So he actually is ordained to look after our village and us, which is a great thing because then it means that he's not having contact with anywhere else. But Larissa would like to answer.
I want to add something, you know. It is very good that our synod from time to time gave orders for the parishes. but it's fantastic that we as monasteries, there is one article which says monasteries, they have to keep their own program. So this was a possibility of flexibility, and we had really a lot of more than in common days liturgical experiences, because last year, for example, Easter time, it was all the churches were closed for also the priests, they didn't have where to go. We had other Easters, we just tried to find a priest for us to celebrate. And this last Easter, we had minimum 10 priests that they would like to come to celebrate. So, of course, it came one, but we had a very rich possibility for a rich liturgical life, I can say.
And in Estonia?
In Estonia, they never stop having liturgies. Really, they have, liturgy is their material, the main material that they work with. Liturgies are twice a week, I can say, in Estonia. Although it is difficult, they manage to have it. You know approximately the problems of Estonia, I can imagine. It is the problems of the relationship with the Russian church, because, and we were positive to help, that's why we are there. But our main method is really to be there and show love to the people, openness. And, you know, Estonians are very closed people. They don't trust very easily. So we try, for example, to have a very good garden. So probably they come to see the garden, but they can, at the same time they can hear and visit the church and hear things that they make them free and more free by the time. And I think this is to be there. It's very important.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Does anybody else have a question to ask?
You're welcome.
Sister Theoktisti? If not, I would like to thank you, Sister Theoktisti, for persevering and giving us a very interesting talk. In spite of the technical difficulties you had, you recovered extremely well. Although I've been to the monastery twice, I found your update and what has been going on fascinating. And all I can do is wish you all the very best from all of us, and hope that you get through it strengthened and keep on the successful path that you have been following up till now. And also I'd like to thank the Gerondissa very much for joining you and answering some of the questions as well. It is a joy to hear your voice. Thank you both very much.
We would just like to ask one question. Okay.
Yes.
Could I just ask one question? How is Bishop Callisto?
He had an operation back in January or February. He is recovering. He isn't that well. I mean, he's no longer young, of course, but he is on the mend and he is recovering slowly.
Thank you. I'm sorry, that was the question we had. All right. Sorry.
One last thing, Douglas, are you still with us? If so, would you like to just mention the books that you have? Yes. I don't know that he's with us still, but Sister Elizabeth Theoktisti has just posted a message to say that she expects to see Metropolitan Callistus tomorrow and will pass on your greetings.
Thank you very much.
And,
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention that if you go to the Friends of Mount Athos website, you will find that there are several interesting books, including one celebrating 30 years of the Society, with lots of interesting essays and beautiful photographs about Mount Athos, and also a book called On Prayer, which is a summary of all the talks given at our last Madingley conference. So please do have a look at the website and see whether you would like to order any books. Once again, Sister Theoktisti, thank you very much, and all the very best to you and all the sisters.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for joining the meeting.